theory has to be balanced by practice. So let's just start with a little practice and begin by finding a comfortable posture. And if you can sit upright or sit on a cushion cross-legged or sit in a chair. I'm sitting in a chair just as I can't bend my knees, but the important thing is to have your back relatively straight and relax your shoulders so that they're not tense. Don't hunch your shoulders up. And just feel your entire body supported by the chair or the cushion or whatever you're sitting on. Just feel the weight of your body, not in a judgmental way that we think about weight, but just gravity. And just rest your mind in that awareness of being in a body, breathing, feeling the in-breath and the out-breath. And when thoughts arise, just let the thoughts dissolve without chasing after them. We don't need anything extra right now. We can just sit with ourselves. If there's difficult feelings coming up, just send yourself some love. And just know that you are okay just the way you are. We're not trying to fix anything here. We're just trying to be present with this body, with this mind, with this life. And if you get lost, there's sometimes the thoughts just spin out of control. Just come back to your breathing. Use your breath as an anchor to come back to again and again, to ground yourself in the present moment. Notice how the breath keeps changing. Feel all the subtle changes of the breath. So I'll just let you do a little meditation on your own for the next couple of minutes. So before we begin any practice or anything new, any new activity, it's always important to think about our motivation, set a positive intention. And on the Buddhist path, we always try to remember the motivation of altruism, sometimes referred to as Bodhicitta, which is to perform all actions with the wish to be of highest benefit to all other beings. And when we think in this way, to think about taking care of all others, our own well-being and highest benefit is also included. And in order to achieve that ultimate goal, it's important to learn and practice the teachings on wisdom and compassion and all the various realizations of the path. So you can open your eyes whenever you're ready. And so this is the 12th week of a class that we've been going through what's called the Lam Rim. And there are really a lot of good books on this series. One of the first I read that I found really helpful was Open Heart, Clear Mind by Venerable Thupten Chodron. And it goes through some of the main points of the Lam Rim. Lam Rim just means the gradual path. And so we're getting kind of towards the end, which is, it's kind of interesting. When I first got into Buddhism, my first retreat was sort of on a higher level practice, and I had to double back and learn some of the basics, but it's fine. You know, it's a circular learning process. So it's good to just dive in and start learning anywhere. So today we're going to talk about Bodhicitta and the 6 perfections. So as I said, bodhicitta is this altruistic resolve whereby one wishes to be of highest benefit to all other beings. And in order to do that, we, to help others, we realize, well, we can't really do that in our current state because our mind is all over the place, and, you know, we're struggling to manage our own problems. How can we focus on other people's problems? So, you know, that's the whole purpose of the Buddhist path, is to gain self-mastery, essentially, over your own mind, to where you're no longer you know, plagued by lots of delusions and worry and anxiety and fear. You know, you just have an open heart and infinite capacity to help others. So I'm just going to read a quote here. Only after you have thoroughly understood your own problem, being trapped in samsara under the force of karma and delusion, and enduring countless sufferings lifetime after lifetime, can you then begin to comprehend how all others are in the same situation. This gives rise to compassion, and with practice, the awakening of bodhicitta, the altruistic resolve to become completely enlightened for the benefit of all beings. So last time I talked about the 7-point meditation technique for developing bodhicitta, which is, just briefly, to first is remembering that all sentient beings have been our mothers, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, and then developing love, compassion, and the superior resolve that wants to pay back their kindness in the highest way possible. And then the final point is realizing that you have to become a fully enlightened being in order to be capable of helping others in the most skillful way. So after we've meditated on the method for generating bodhicitta, we have the opportunity to take the bodhisattva vow, which plants a very powerful intention in our mind for this life and all future lives. So there are 2 levels of bodhicitta. The first level is aspiring, which is sometimes referred to as wishing bodhicitta. And the second level is engaging bodhicitta. And Venerable Chodron gave the following analogy in explaining this difference. A person may aspire or wish to go on a pilgrimage to India and visit holy sites. or they may go online and buy the ticket, check the travel alerts and so forth, and actually get on the plane and fly to India. So, that greater resolve to actually do the work, get on the path that's the engaging bodhicitta. So if one has received refuge vows in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, which that represents a formal commitment to the Buddhist path, and has taken at least one of the 5 basic precepts, such as abandoning killing, and then is ready to make a formal commitment to the Bodhisattva path, that's enables you to take the Bodhisattva vows. That's sort of like the basic prerequisite. So, in American and modern global culture today, there's a lot of emphasis on individual freedom and free choice. And so I see a lot of pushback against things like vows or anything that might be construed as a rule coming from a religious authority. So it's easy to have cultural bias against the ideas of the idea of vows or precepts, which some may view as infringing upon personal freedom and expression. So it's good to remember that Buddhism never forces anyone to do anything, but offers people a path to choose and only encourages people to take that path on the basis of extensive study and personal reflection. Vows are simply guidelines to help us remember the path we've chosen. If we get confused and old habits come up, they're designed to help us avoid creating negative karma and thereby smooth our progress on the path. But we don't have to take them. First it's good to study what they are, and forcing ourselves to do something never fixes anything. Observing vows and precepts helps us to continue creating positive karma and merit, and forms the basis for the practice of ethical discipline, which is one of the 6 trainings of a bodhisattva. So when you see the traditional painted images of enlightened beings in Tibetan Buddhism, often they are wearing many ornaments made of jewels and precious metals. These aren't adornments in an ordinary fashion sense, but they are symbolic representations of that being's ethical discipline, which is the true source of beauty. When you see somebody who's angry, they're not pretty in that moment. But when people are acting truthfully with kindness and honesty and integrity, there's a certain I don't know, it's kind of an indescribable but noticeable glow around that person. So the essence of the precepts of aspiring and engaging bodhicitta are to always cultivate love, compassion, and altruism for others, to work for their benefit and respect teachers and spiritual friends, be humble and not critical towards others, never harming others, not holding sectarian attitudes, which says, my practice is better than your practice. The ceremony for receiving the Bodhisattva vow is undertaken before a spiritual master that one has cultivated a teacher-student relationship with. And it's understood that the observation of vows is a practice, meaning that we aren't spiritual masters ourselves yet, and therefore sometimes we break a vow. When this happens, ideally one recognizes the transgression as soon as possible and then undertakes the practice of purification in order to restore the vow. So there are various methods for purification, such as doing the Vajrasattva practice, or making prostrations to the 35 Buddhas, or retaking the vows before a spiritual master. And in the Pearl of Wisdom books 1 and 2, which you can find on Amazon, there's really good and clear explanation of the vows, as well as other basic Buddhist practices. So once you've received the Bodhisattva vows, then the method of training is to practice what are known as the 6 perfections of a Bodhisattva. So these are presented in a specific order so that one begins with the easier practices and progresses towards the more difficult ones. And although they share some common themes with the practices found on the lower and medium scopes, which we talked about earlier in the class series, here they are referred to as perfections in the sense that they are made perfect by combining each practice with the understanding of ultimate truth, which is the wisdom that realizes the emptiness of inherent existence. So that's a mouthful, and we'll be talking a lot more about that in the last class, the emptiness of inherent existence and wisdom. But that's what ultimately frees us from ignorance and from the cycle of all of our problems, is developing this wisdom that wakes up our mind and sees things clearly, so that we're no longer confused and no longer hindered by our own karma and delusions which arise out of that confusion. So the 6 perfections are generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. Practicing these 6 perfections results in the accumulation of positive merit, enabling us to one day completely purify all the inner obstacles, including the most subtle obscurations to omniscience. So beginning with the perfection of generosity, there are several types of giving described. The first form of giving is offering material objects, such as money to charity and food to the hungry. And with any form of giving, the most important aspect isn't the object given or even its monetary value, but the clarity and expansiveness of our intention behind the giving. Most important is to give with the mind of Bodhicitta, wishing to bring complete benefit to all sentient beings. It is important to remember that sentient beings, including all beings, includes all beings, not just humans. So we're trying to think about the well-being of all animals and beings in other realms that we can't see. So there are many stories in the sutras about the virtue of giving. A boy who lived at the time of Buddha was building sandcastles on the beach with his friends when he saw the Buddha approaching. With a mind of great faith and aspiration, he ran up to the Buddha and with both hands holding a mound of sand, imagined as the royal treasure from his castle, he placed the sand in the Buddha's begging bowl. The Buddha praised the boy's giving and foresaw that he would be born as the future king Ashoka and help spread the Dharma throughout the land. On the other hand, wealthy people sometimes give large donations, but their motivation could include non-virtuous attitudes of greed and attachment, or perhaps simply wanting a tax write-off and imagining the praise and fame they will receive from having their name listed on the donor wall. We call this virtue signaling now. In order to practice the perfection of giving, one must also maintain awareness of the emptiness of the circle of three. That is, the object given, the subject or one who gives, and the act of giving do not exist inherently, independently, or ultimately. Each of these three exist in dependence or relationship with others. Another kind of giving is offering service. If we have a strong awareness of bodhicitta, offering service is actually occurring 24/7, if you think about it, because all of our actions are in service of sentient beings. But on a more generic level, this includes things like parenting, especially mothering. We serve our children, helping them grow into kind, competent, and intelligent beings. It also includes any work we do, whether it is volunteer work or our regular job. So in a very strict economic sense, service work usually refers to jobs like an electrician or a plumber, vehicle or computer repair, restaurant work, and so forth. But in a broader sense, any work usually brings benefit of some kind to others, and therefore I think it can be called service. Although Buddhist teachings on right livelihood makes clear that some jobs cause harm or increase the mental afflictions, and things like working as a bartender, selling bombs, certain kinds of advertising, and so forth, these should be avoided. Offering the Dharma teachings is another way to practice the perfection of generosity. Normally, this is advice for ordained practitioners and bodhisattvas, but of course, today there are many qualified teachers who aren't living as monks or nuns. I don't necessarily include myself in that list, but regardless, you should always check the qualifications of any teacher, no matter how much recognition and fame they have, or giving love and protection from fear is also important. This can be quite a powerful yet simple practice. Sometimes something as small as holding the door for someone, giving directions to travelers, taking care of elders. It can also include things like being aware of the problem of homelessness or women fleeing abusive relationships in your community, and not just sweeping these problems under the rug, but doing whatever you can to support organizations that help people affected by wealth inequality and all the terrible violence in our world. Giving your time to others without thinking about getting anything in return can be challenging, and it's important to be realistic with our capacity to give, to build up our practice slowly so that we don't burn out. So this is just a brief discussion, and there's a lot more to this practice on things like what to give and what not to give and when to give and obstacles to giving. And in Geshe Sopa's textbook and Yangtze Rinpoche's text on the Lam Rim, there's many other sources where you can learn more about the practice, and of course I'm happy to answer any questions. Then the second perfection is the perfection of ethics. So the central motivation in the practice of ethics is the wish to abandon harming other sentient beings. So there are three types of ethics described: abandoning harming others, practicing virtue, and benefiting sentient beings. Abandoning harm mainly refers to keeping vows and precepts, such as avoiding the 10 non-virtuous actions, non-killing, non-stealing, refraining from sexual misconduct, avoiding lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, and gossip. And the three mental non-virtues: refraining from coveting, malice, and wrong views. Once again, these ethical practices are perfected by conjoining them with an understanding of emptiness. Both the person who engages in ethics and the ethical action itself are empty of inherent existence. But please don't get the wrong idea here. Our ethical behavior does have consequences. Padmasambhava, also known as Guru Rinpoche, who was credited with bringing Buddhism to Tibet from India in the 8th century, once said, "Though the view," which refers to the wisdom that understands emptiness, "though the view should be as vast as the sky, keep your conduct as fine as barley flour." So they use the analogy of barley flour because in Tibet, they grind up barley flour and eat it with milk from yaks. That's one of their main staples. It's called tsampa. So that's the level of awareness of our ethical discipline we should maintain, is very fine awareness of our actions and the potential for harm to others and ourselves. So that's the perfection of ethics. And then third is the practice, the perfection of patience, which again has three parts: not retaliating in the face of harm, bearing hardships and difficulty without getting upset. And then third is the patience associated with Dharma practice. One time I was at a teaching with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Los Angeles, and someone in the audience submitted a written question asking, "What is the quick path to enlightenment?" And so many people have heard about Tantra being a quick path, enabling you to achieve enlightenment in one life. However, you have to already have accumulated a vast amount of positive potential before you're ready to make use of Tantra. So it is only quick if you forget about how long it took you to get to that level. In any case, His Holiness responded very forcibly, saying, "There is no quick path." And he gave a short account of the life of Milarepa, the famous Tibetan yogi, who endured many years of hardships and tests by his guru before achieving enlightenment. Most of us aren't prepared to live in a cave above the snow line, subsisting only on cooked nettles, not sleeping, and completing many grueling tests given by his guru, to the point where his entire backside looked like one giant callus. So, it's good to be patient in our approach to the spiritual path in general, and realize it takes time to purify the mind, but it most definitely is achievable. In my own life, not that I'm any saint or anything, I still have lots of mental afflictions, but if I look at where I was when I was 18, I was completely out of control then. And so just like learning any skill, the spiritual path is is something we can accomplish, but it's more complicated than learning to ride a bicycle, so it's good to be patient. One of the best sources for learning about patience is found in Shantideva's text. The Sanskrit title is Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, which is translated in English as the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And there's some really lovely English translations that are available that go through all of the 6 perfections. And the first verse reads of the chapter on patience reads, "There is no evil like hatred, and no fortitude like patience. Thus I should strive in various ways to meditate on patience." So then the fourth perfection, and this will be the last one I talk about today, is the perfection of joyous effort or enthusiastic resolve. And again, there's 3 aspects described. One is armor-like patience, like armadillo, having a really strong protective armor, which basically means not being lazy regarding our Dharma practice, making strong effort at all times to achieve realizations of the path. Maybe we want to watch that movie or that series, but there's our Dharma book sitting on the shelf or our meditation cushion, and we have to think about it. Okay, do I want to check out and just keep going in samsara, or do I want to work today? Which we have to be realistic, and this isn't meant to be a whip at our back or anything like that, but just to try to make our best effort. Second is having enthusiasm and making effort to accumulate virtue. And last is the perseverance related to benefiting sentient beings. So always wanting to accomplish the benefit of others. So even if we realize with logic that enlightenment is possible, that the mind's positive qualities can be increased without limit, it requires strong effort to avoid discouragement. One of my teachers reminded me once with a big smile that it doesn't matter how long it takes to reach our goal, as long as we are headed in that direction. Let's just take a few seconds to dedicate the merit and rejoice that we created together as spiritual friends, and so that all of our discussion and learning together may one day result in our own enlightenment and benefiting infinite other sentient beings as a result. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.